I was just fixing my bike, then my girlfriend's sister texted me, and nothing would ever feel the same. The afternoon sunlight filtered lazily through the garage windows, catching on the specks of dust that danced in the still air. I crouched beside my bike, fingers smeared with motor oil, adjusting the chain for the 100th time. The rhythmic click of tools against metal was oddly comforting. It always grounded me when thoughts started to spiral. The faint hum of a distant lawnmower blended with the occasional chirp of birds outside, creating a quiet, ordinary soundtrack to my weekend. I wiped my hands on a rag, leaving dark smudges across the fabric, and leaned back to inspect my work. That's when my phone buzzed on the workbench. I glanced down. A message. From her. My girlfriend's sister. My stomach nodded. Of all the people who could text me while I was elbow-deep in bike grease, why her? The bubble of ordinary calm I had been wrapped in suddenly felt fragile. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to ignore it, preserve the safe boundaries I had built. Another part, the curious, guilty part, wanted to see what she had written. Finally, I unlocked the phone. Her message was short, casual, almost innocent. Hey, hope I'm not bothering you. Just thought I'd check in. I exhaled slowly. No immediate danger here. Nothing alarming. Yet, there was a warmth in her words, an ease that made me smile despite the grease on my fingers. I found myself responding, carefully choosing my words, feeling a subtle thrill at the simple act of conversation. As I typed, my fingers brushed against the cool metal of the bike frame, the tactile sensation grounding me. The smell of motor oil mixed with the faint sweetness of afternoon sun through the windows, creating a strangely intimate, suspended moment. I felt a tension I didn't want to admit, a quiet rush that came with unexpected attention. Her reply arrived quickly. Lighthearted, joking about a minor inconvenience she had faced that morning. I laughed softly, surprised at how easily the conversation flowed. My chest felt lighter with each word exchanged, though a tiny, cautious voice in my mind reminded me of boundaries of my relationship and the potential minefield of feelings that could creep in. For a moment, I leaned back against the workbench, phone in hand, my gaze flickering to her picture on the screen. I noticed the little things, the subtle smile, the way her eyes seemed to catch the light, the graceful ease in her posture. She wasn't just my girlfriend's sister. In this quiet interaction, she was a person whose presence lingered in my thoughts longer than it should. I shook my head slightly, trying to push away the flutter of unfamiliar warmth. The ordinary afternoon of grease, metal, and sunlight had shifted in an instant, charged now with the tiny spark of connection. My hands itched to respond, yet I hesitated, aware of the tension between curiosity and loyalty. The garage fell silent again, save for the faint creak of the bike stand and the hum of the distant lawnmower. Outside, the world continued as usual, oblivious to the subtle, unspoken stirrings that had taken root inside me. I glanced down at my phone one last time before returning to the chain, aware that this simple, seemingly innocent message had shifted the rhythm of my day and, perhaps, the rhythm of something more. By the time I had finished wiping my hands clean, my phone had buzzed again. Her name flashed across the screen like a small, electric pulse in the quiet garage. I hesitated for only a moment, curiosity won over caution, and opened the message. She was joking about a minor mishap that had happened earlier in her day. Coffee spilled on an important document, the kind of thing that could ruin a morning, but somehow felt comical when she described it. I typed a reply with a smile, careful to keep the tone light, offering a small laugh and a sympathetic comment. Within moments, her response arrived, warm and playful, almost teasing. As the conversation continued, I realized it wasn't just words passing across screens. There was a rhythm developing, a gentle back and forth that made the minutes slip by unnoticed. My mind wandered briefly to times I had seen her in person, the way she moved with quiet confidence, the subtle expressions that revealed both intelligence and vulnerability. It struck me that texting her, even this casual, innocent messaging, allowed a glimpse of something deeper, a side of her that wasn't filtered through the lens of family or expectation. I felt a strange awareness, a tension I couldn't name. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I paused, rereading her words, trying to sense the tone beyond the emojis and punctuation. There was warmth there, a hint of playfulness, and perhaps something more. My chest felt lighter, but my heart was alert in that peculiar, heightened way that happens when someone unexpected begins to occupy your thoughts. I laughed softly at one of her jokes, and for a moment, the sound felt loud in the empty garage. The sunlight shifted across the bike's metal frame, catching the smudges of oil and reflecting tiny streaks of gold into my eyes. I noticed how my fingers itched to keep typing, to prolong this simple, yet strange, connection. Each response felt like a small thread weaving a quiet intimacy, binding us across the distance of text and social boundaries. There was a moment when her message made me pause, a short, thoughtful question about my weekend plans, casually inviting me to share more about my life. My thumb hesitated over the send button. Sharing too much felt risky, yet withholding felt unnatural. Finally, I typed a reply, honest yet measured, and sent it. Almost immediately, her response arrived, appreciative, light-hearted, but with a subtle undertone of something unspoken. I leaned back against the workbench, phone in hand, the rough wood pressing into my back, the faint smell of motor oil lingering in the air. My thoughts flickered to my girlfriend, guilt and loyalty warred with the strange, fluttering curiosity I felt. And yet, there was a human, undeniable pull in the conversation, a quiet warmth that made the ordinary afternoon feel charged, almost electric. As the conversation tapered for a moment, I glanced at her profile picture again, noting the gentle tilt of her head, the way sunlight caught in her hair. My chest tightened slightly, and a fleeting thought crossed my mind. How small, harmless interactions can feel like stepping into another world entirely. The garage, once ordinary and silent, now hummed with the echo of unseen connection. I set the phone down for a moment, letting the warmth of the conversation linger, aware that something subtle but significant had shifted. The afternoon stretched on, and I knew this quiet, innocent texting would linger in my thoughts far longer than the minutes it had consumed. The afternoon light had softened into a gentle golden hue, spilling across the garage in thin, warm streams. I was crouched over the bike again, adjusting the gears, when my phone buzzed. Her name appeared, and my chest tightened for a moment, a curious mix of anticipation and caution. I swiped open the message, expecting another light-hearted note, but what I saw made me pause. Her words were different this time, quiet, thoughtful, almost hesitant. She spoke about a small, but deeply personal moment from her morning, a fleeting worry that had lingered in her mind. Something about the way she phrased it made me feel like I was being trusted with a small, delicate part of her world. Without thinking, I typed a careful, empathetic response, offering support and a few encouraging words. As I waited for her reply, I realized my fingers were lingering on the phone longer than usual, and my mind had drifted from the grease-scented metal of the bike. There was a strange flutter in my chest, not desire exactly, but a tension I couldn't name, a pull toward this unexpected intimacy. When her response arrived, it was soft, warm, and sincere, thanking me for listening. My heart gave a subtle jolt, and I found myself rereading the message, savoring the quiet trust she had placed in me. The conversation continued, each message revealing small fragments of her inner life. She mentioned a personal dream she had been chasing, a fleeting insecurity about her work, and even a minor family worry. In each revelation, I sensed not only her vulnerability, but also her quiet strength. My replies became more than polite gestures. They carried a weight of sincerity and care I hadn't expected to feel. For a moment, I leaned back, phone in hand, letting the gravity of our exchange settle over me. The garage smelled faintly of oil and sunlight, and the distant hum of the lawnmower seemed muted, replaced by the subtle, electric tension of connection. I realized I was smiling without meaning to, heart slightly tighter, chest warmer. I was captivated not by physical beauty alone, but by the honesty and trust we were building across these fleeting digital exchanges. Then came a brief pause in our conversation, a silence heavy with unspoken acknowledgement. I caught myself wondering how much of this closeness was allowed, how much crossed invisible lines. My fingers itched to type something that might bridge the gap, but I hesitated, aware that even a single word could carry weight beyond intention. When she finally responded, it was casual, almost offhand, yet I could feel the vulnerability lingering beneath the words. A simple "thanks, I feel a bit better now" carried more than comfort. It carried a subtle admission, an unspoken bond forming between us. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the quiet warmth settle in my chest. The afternoon continued around me, the bike's chain clicking softly, the sunlight shifting, shadows stretching across the garage floor, yet I was acutely aware that something small, accidental, but significant had begun. A connection had been made, fragile and delicate, yet undeniably real. And as I set the phone down, I knew that my thoughts would return to this conversation, to her words, and to the strange, lingering pull that had begun between us. The afternoon had begun to wane, soft golden light spilling unevenly through the garage windows, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. I was halfway through adjusting the bike's brakes, hands smudged with oil and sweat, when my phone buzzed again. Her name appeared, and a small jolt ran through me. The earlier lightheartedness of our conversations had shifted subtly, something deeper and more charged lingered beneath the surface. Her message was playful, teasing, and unexpected, a joke about how hopelessly clumsy I must be with my bike, paired with a casual challenge to prove otherwise. I chuckled, wiping grease from my hands onto a rag, feeling a strange warmth spreading through my chest. It was an innocent prompt, and yet the way she phrased it made it feel intimate, like a private joke shared across invisible lines. I typed a careful response, engaging her banter without overstepping boundaries, but my mind couldn't ignore the flutter that accompanied it. Each message carried a subtle tension, the kind that makes your pulse quicken without reason, and each word seemed to hang longer than it should. I paused, thumb hovering over the send button, suddenly hyper-aware of the quiet garage, the metallic scent of oil, the faint hum of a lawnmower outside, and the sun filtering through the dust motes in the air. Her next reply arrived almost instantly. She had added a teasing emoji, followed by a question about whether I would be willing to help her out later that day with something small, completely innocent, technically, yet the suggestion tugged at my thoughts in a way that felt almost dangerous. I hesitated, conscious of the line between playful banter and something that could stir emotions I wasn't ready to confront. I leaned back against the workbench, fingers brushing lightly over the phone screen as I read her words again. My heart beat a little faster, and I felt a subtle heat rise to my face. There was a tension between us now, unspoken but undeniable, carried in the timing of messages, the choice of words, the playful undertone that hid something more serious beneath. It was a delicate balance. One wrong move could tip the scale, yet the pull toward her attention was magnetic. I tried to focus on the bike, tracing the chain and brakes with methodical attention, but my mind kept wandering back to the conversation. I caught myself imagining the hypothetical scenario she had suggested and immediately chastised myself for it. There was guilt in the awareness of my feelings, mingling with the thrill of connection, and it made the air in the garage feel charged. For a moment, I paused everything, phone in hand, heart tight with an unfamiliar mix of excitement and caution. Her laughter echoed through our text, subtle and warm, and it struck me how small interactions could carry enormous emotional weight. I felt the tension peak in that instant, desire restrained, curiosity heightened, boundaries quietly tested. Finally, I typed a measured response, acknowledging her joke and agreeing to the small favor with careful words that maintained the line between intimacy and propriety. I set the phone down, fingers lingering on the smooth glass, heart still thrumming in a way that surprised me. The garage, once mundane and mechanical, now seemed alive with the unspoken charge between us, a tension I couldn't ignore and wouldn't easily forget. The late afternoon light had softened into a warm, honeyed glow, spilling through the garage windows and casting long, gentle shadows across the workbench. I was cleaning the bike chain, fingers blackened with grease, when my phone buzzed again. I wiped my hands quickly on a rag, curious yet cautious, and swiped open the message. Her words were quieter this time, carrying a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. She shared something personal, a lingering worry about work, a fleeting sense of loneliness she had felt lately, the kind of detail people usually reserve for close friends or family. My chest tightened, a flutter of awareness mingling with a sense of responsibility. She was trusting me, reaching across the invisible boundary that separated casual interaction from genuine connection. I paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Every word I typed carried weight. I chose honesty, writing carefully, reassuring her while respecting her feelings. I could feel the subtle warmth of empathy spreading through my chest, a quiet satisfaction in being someone she could confide in. When she read my message, I imagined her smiling softly at the screen, and it sent an unexpected shiver through me, a mix of connection and the unspoken tension between us. Her reply was heartfelt, tinged with relief and gratitude. She wrote about how comforting it was just to share, and I felt an odd thrill at the simplicity of it. It was intimate without being romantic, personal without being inappropriate, and yet every sentence carried a weight that seemed to press gently against the edges of my self-control. For a moment, I set the phone down, leaning back against the workbench. The cool wood pressed against my back, the lingering scent of motor oil and warm sunlight surrounding me. I closed my eyes and let myself absorb the quiet intensity of the connection. Outside, the world hummed along, distant voices, a car passing, birds chirping, but in the garage, time seemed to stretch, suspended between our words and the subtle pull of shared vulnerability. I thought about the contrast between her carefully composed messages and the laughter or casual teasing from earlier days. Now, beneath the playful banter, I sensed a depth I hadn't fully acknowledged before. There was honesty here, raw and delicate, and it made me acutely aware of my own thoughts and feelings. I realized that what we were sharing wasn't just a conversation. It was trust, fragile and precious, and entirely unspoken between the lines. When she responded again, I felt a faint warmth in my chest, a small flutter in my stomach. It wasn't excitement in a reckless sense, it was subtle, human, like standing close to someone who has quietly become important. I smiled, almost unconsciously, and noticed how much I had come to anticipate her messages, not for flirtation or drama, but for the quiet reassurance of connection. The sun dipped lower, golden streaks fading into softer pastels. I set the phone down on the workbench, fingers lingering on the smooth surface, and glanced at the bike as if to ground myself. The afternoon had shifted in a way I hadn't expected. A simple conversation, shared vulnerabilities, and honest words had altered the rhythm of the day, leaving an unspoken tension and a warmth I couldn't ignore. And in that quiet, grease-scented garage, I realized something significant. Our connection had grown beyond casual curiosity. It had become real, human, and deeply meaningful, a slow, subtle pull that neither of us could yet name aloud. The afternoon had softened into early evening, the golden light fading into a warm, dim glow that filled the garage with long shadows. I sat on the edge of the workbench, wiping grease off my hands, the faint smell of oil still clinging to my fingers. My phone buzzed, and I immediately knew it was her. My chest tightened, a mix of anticipation and apprehension settling in like a weight I couldn't shake. Her message was casual on the surface, asking if I had a moment to talk about something small, something personal. But beneath the words, there was a subtle vulnerability, a hint that she wanted more than just a casual exchange. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard, aware of the stakes in a way that made my heart beat faster. I felt both excitement and hesitation, the pull of curiosity tangling with a growing sense of responsibility. I typed carefully, agreeing to talk, though my fingers trembled ever so slightly. As I hit send, a small shiver ran through me, an awareness of the delicate tension that had been building over the past days. I could feel my pulse in my throat, the warmth of my chest spreading in that peculiar way when emotional boundaries teeter on the edge. This wasn't about impulsive desire, it was about connection, intimacy, and the unspoken emotions that had quietly grown between us. Her reply came quickly, suggesting a brief video call. I hesitated, staring at the phone as if it were a live wire, the choice looming before me. Part of me wanted to step back, preserve the lines of loyalty and morality. Another part, the curious, almost guilty part, longed to see her face, hear her voice, and experience the emotional connection we had been cultivating over texts. When the call connected, her face appeared on the screen, soft-lit by her room's lamp, a gentle expression that seemed almost fragile. My chest tightened again, and for a moment, I forgot the bike, the grease, even the passing time. We spoke about minor things at first, her day, small observations, laughter, but the conversation gradually deepened. She shared something personal, a thought or worry she hadn't mentioned before, and I found myself listening intently, heart swelling with empathy and a strange, tender affection. At that moment, I realized how intensely I was drawn to her, not just for charm or beauty, but for the trust and vulnerability she offered. I felt the weight of choice pressing down. I could let this connection grow closer, risk the complications it might bring, or I could pull back, honor boundaries, and contain the emotions that had been stirring inside me. There was a pause, an almost imperceptible hesitation on both sides. Our eyes, hers on the screen, mine on her face, lingered, holding unspoken words, silent admissions, and subtle desire restrained by conscience. My fingers curled around the phone, a shiver of longing and restraint running through me. Finally, I spoke carefully, choosing honesty over impulse. I acknowledged the closeness we had shared, expressed appreciation for her trust, but kept the line clear: no promises, no crossing boundaries, just recognition of what had quietly grown between us. Her smile was gentle, understanding, tinged with the same tension I felt. When we ended the call, I sat back, letting the quiet of the garage settle around me. Shadows stretched across the floor, and the smell of oil and warm sunlight lingered, but my mind remained on her face, her words, and the delicate, electric tension that had reached its peak. I knew that choices had been made, boundaries tested, and hearts stirred, and the lingering warmth of connection would follow me long after the evening faded into night. The evening had settled softly around the garage, the sunlight now a gentle amber fading into dusky twilight. I sat on the edge of the workbench, the bike still nearby, tools scattered across the floor, and the faint smell of oil mingling with the cool air. My phone lay beside me, silent for the first time in hours, and I felt the quiet weight of reflection pressing gently on my chest. The conversation with her earlier, the texts, the call, the small but significant exchanges, had left a lingering warmth that was both comforting and complicated. I thought about the trust she had shown me, the playful moments, and the unspoken tension that had threaded through every word. For a brief while, it had been intoxicating, a connection that made the ordinary world fade into the background. Yet, in the quiet aftermath, I realized that the most important choice wasn't about indulgence. It was about clarity, honesty, and respect for her, for myself, and for my girlfriend. I picked up the phone and typed slowly, carefully choosing each word. I thanked her for trusting me, for the laughter and openness, and for allowing me to be someone she could lean on, even in the smallest ways. My fingers hovered over the send button, a pause heavy with the weight of unspoken emotions. Finally, I pressed send. Her reply arrived almost immediately, warm and understanding, carrying a subtle note of gratitude and relief. In that instant, I realized that our bond, delicate, unexpected, and quietly profound, didn't need to cross boundaries to be meaningful. We shared a few final messages, acknowledging the unique connection we had formed. She expressed appreciation for the way I had listened, the way I had cared, and the quiet respect I had shown. I felt a surge of tenderness, a deep, human warmth that didn't rely on flirtation or romantic indulgence. Our words carried the weight of emotional honesty and understanding, the kind of intimacy that could linger long after the conversation ended. As I put the phone down and leaned back, the garage seemed transformed. The tools, the bike, the fading sunlight, everything felt infused with a sense of calm, of emotional closure. I allowed myself a small, reflective smile. The tension that had once simmered beneath our interactions had resolved into something quiet, mature, and satisfying. No boundaries had been broken, yet the experience had left a lasting imprint on my heart. I thought about her face, the warmth in her words, and the gentle, human connection that had quietly grown between us. There was a sense of completion, a soft ending that didn't erase the significance of what had occurred but instead honored it. I knew that this interaction had changed me, made me more aware of emotional subtlety, the weight of trust, and the delicate power of connection. Finally, I glanced at the bike one last time, wiped the remaining grease from my hands, and stood up. Outside, the world continued its steady rhythm, the evening breeze carrying the scent of distant flowers and cooling asphalt. I felt grounded, aware, and quietly satisfied. Our story, brief, subtle, and emotionally charged, had reached its resolution. The connection remained, etched gently into memory, a reminder that emotional intimacy could exist in its purest form, without crossing lines or demanding resolution beyond understanding. In the stillness of the garage, I realized something important. Meaningful bonds don't always need to be romantic to be profound. And sometimes, the most powerful connections are those that leave you changed, aware, and quietly grateful.